Hello everyone. Following is the conversation with Abhirath Batra, who is a software engineer at Microsoft. Now, Abhirath is a close friend and ex-colleague from Elucidata. And during this conversation, we discussed several topics like working at a startup versus working at a big corporation like Microsoft, Facebook, Amazon, etc. And then he discussed what his interview experience was like at Microsoft, and some tips and tricks on how to crack those interviews, and what Microsoft actually looks for in their candidates. Then we discussed, what's that one thing that makes for a really good engineer. So do watch out for that comment made by him. And then at the end, we have a rapid fire round where Abhirath has answered some really interesting questions that you might want to know. Then Abhirath is someone who has made a transition from data science to software engineering, and it is very interesting to learn why and how someone has been successful in making that transition. So yeah, there's a lot to learn. I hope you find this conversation and this interview interesting and enriching. So yeah, if you do that, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Comment down below what kind of videos you want to see. And I have provided all the links to his profile, his blog post that you should definitely check out. So all of those links are in the description below. And now, without any further ado, let's head over to the conversation. Right. Hey, Abhirath. First of all, thanks so much for doing this interview with me. And I know you have a lot to share and a lot to comment upon. I follow you like religiously on Twitter nowadays, and it was very hard for me to actually narrow this down and just to keep it centered around engineering and learning and career choices. So there's one of the tweets that I read which said, anyone who wants to hang out with me after this whole pandemic can find me in Amsterdam. So my question is, how hard was or is it for you to keep yourself sane, during these whole pandemic times, and if you can talk about your coping mechanism.
Okay.
How has it been?
Well, so first of all, thanks for having me. I don't know how much value I can add, but yeah, I mean, I think if you're focusing on learning, then yeah, I mean, I think that is the one thing that I really care about, because I don't think I've done too much with my life other than to figure out. I mean, mera thoda, I mean, is Hindi all right?
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah, so the way I look at it is that I've been so far on the method of elimination that I'm trying things out and I'm trying to fail fast and see, oh, this doesn't work for me and this works for me. So that's kind of the trajectory I'm on.
Mm-hmm.
That's one. Secondly, about the pandemic, well, it was interesting because I moved for my job to Microsoft on 21st March, and 22nd was Janta curfew, and 23rd say I was stuck in the hotel which Microsoft put me in.
Yeah.
And the good thing was that I had another guy joining my team, my roommate and flatmate now, Abhijit. And so we were stuck there together. So we started doing onboarding together, and then eventually I was able to move out to my friend's place. And then the org was super helpful with all of that. Like they used one of the vehicles that they had for emergency transport and helped me get out. Just in the name of my sanity, the org was, they care enough to get you out of this sort of a situation. So after that, I think once I was at home with friends, then life was much more relaxed. As long as I have some place to walk around and I can cook my own food, more or less I'm good. I need company and some bit of agency in life. Other than that, I'm fine.
Okay, makes sense. And you moved.
So because I've not been with family, which I think has been the biggest challenge for most people that I know of, and not because I'm not saying anything about families other than that families are. I mean, so unless there are people who like you, I think you're used to living with your family.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people who in my friend circle were not anymore used to living with families. They've been staying in hostels and by themselves for the past 4 to 6 years or whatever, or more than that, 8 years. I've been staying out for 8 years. So for me to spend, or for them to stay back with family, there has been a huge divergence over time in their lifestyles, and therefore that is what I think was harder for most people I know, and that is something I escaped. And so lockdown was, to be honest, not too hard on me.
Okay.
And then, of course, my perception of risk for myself was very low because of, thankfully, my age and that I don't have any conditions.
Mm-hmm.
Me and my friends, we were trying to, because my friends were biologists, all of these are PhD students here at TIFR. So we were scanning through literature and trying to consume as much as possible. So we arrived at vitamin D being one of the major things that concern risk with COVID. So we started to jack up on vitamin D. Like, we found so far about 6 studies that have highly correlated vitamin D levels with outcomes of COVID, both severity and mortality, and no studies refuting that correlation. So far, I mean, it looks like, I mean, there's no certainty, of course, but it looks like that's a highly probable thing. So we just focused on these things that we could do. So so-called terror was not a thing that we suffered from. We didn't have family members at risk sitting with us to make us feel that we shouldn't go out, otherwise I'm putting grandma at risk, right?
Yeah.
All of those things were much more neater in our life, so life was sorted.
Yeah, vitamin D and friends. Yeah. Okay.
Things worked out.
Okay. So you moved to Hyderabad to join Microsoft in the middle of the pandemic, so to say, and I think it must be you must be about to complete 1 year at Microsoft now. So how's it like working at one of the greatest tech companies out there?
So I think Microsoft experience is it's very straightforward. It's very good. Because they understand that engineers drive their org, and therefore they have to be kept happy. That is their agenda overall, and that, because this is an engineering first org. And so because of that, I think, and plus it's an old organization, so they have a structure well built in. Like, you come here and you fit in really well like a piece of a puzzle.
Okay.
And now some people might perceive that as lack of agency, in that you are given a very specific role and then that you have to fulfill these needs. Now that's one way to look at it. The other is that, so for this is something that applies majorly to me, which is that I function much better in a structured environment, especially because I think my skill level is not up there yet. Right.
Okay.
And so for that reason, like I mean, I spent my college working on my research stuff. So I did a lot of data science and computational biology. I spent 2 years trying to get into a PhD in comp bio. So I didn't do a lot of engineering. Right. And then at Elucidate, I did a little bit of engineering, a little bit of data science, and I figured that I enjoy engineering the most. I mean, even though I desperately wanted to do that PhD stuff really well, engineering is what gave me the most amount of dopamine hit. And so it became clear that that's what I want to pursue. And I mean, because at that time when I was seeking jobs, I also had an offer from LinkedIn, and that was a data science offer. And then I didn't take that because I figured that engineering, I mean, in that moment, that call for me was that engineering is the better suited thing for me. And that's, that feedback loop of building something and then seeing its output is what is very good. And so, but I'm not really good at it yet. I have to iterate a lot more to get better. And, because your brain wires differently for different sorts of things. And once tooling, let's say, I mean, data science is a lot about scripting. You write one program, you write it well or not, it does its job. Whereas engineering has to do with, there's too many moving components to fit them together, and fitting together is mostly what causes friction and inefficiency. So that is the thing for which my brain is not fully wired yet, and I'm getting there and I can see a progression. But to do that, being in a bigger company as opposed to startup, works best for me. For others, maybe the pressure of a startup is the better place to do that. But for me, it works better, where I have time to make mistakes, time to take time. And if I can't deliver, somebody else takes up the reins. And so now, after 7 months into the org, is when I could deliver something really fast without taking help from others, or at least nobody needed to take over the stuff from me, and I was able to deliver. But it took 7 months for me to get there. to get a handle on the complex system and to have the ability to work with the complex system at a faster rate. And yeah, so that flexibility for me is majorly a part of Microsoft experience. And I think that is something that people probably do not like after 5, 7, 10 years in the org.
Mm-hmm.
Added to that is Azure itself is more like a startup because it is competing with AWS, and therefore it's always it is a very hungry organization. It wants to deliver faster and more and things. Majorly, I think that's the scenario here, that we are competing in a competitive market where we are trailing by a large margin from our competitor, and so therefore the incentive to work really hard is quite high.
Okay. All right. So, and in contrast to working at an early stage startup, let's say Lucid Data, although it's kind of like a mid-sized company now, how is this different? And more importantly, how does one make the decision of choosing, one over another, given that they are competent, of course? Like a mutual friend of ours recently had this problem, had this dilemma that he was struggling with, whether he should go for these FAANG companies or Microsoft, or whether he should join an early stage startup, because he had offers from both.
Right. So to my mind, I think one of the first tests is when you say competence, you can't just isolate engineering competence, because you don't live life in isolation of your talents, right? You have your entire behavioral structure around you, and my behavioral structure is something that was that found itself at odds with the needs of the startup at that point of time, right? And I think so the first thing one should look for is, do you have founder mentality? Like, do you like to take ownership of things as if they're your own thing? And I'll contrast this. Like, so when at Lucid Data, let's say I have to do something, right? I went and started a job with a mindset that I would like to have time to myself, time to pursue the things that I like, right? And so in that, because that's how I saw my friends living, and I wanted to live like them, that I could travel a lot, that I could spend my time with friends a lot, I could party a lot, things like that. And that is not compatible with owning what you're doing at a startup. Not easily, at least, right? And so what would happen is, and I'll contrast this with when I'm working on my own website, and I wrote this article around the alpha thing, right?
Yeah.
That was my first experience with trying to market my own material, something that I've written, because I know that I'm good at writing, and I've tried to write blogs since college, school, whatever, and I've never been successful at writing content, because I thought I didn't know what to write about, and I thought that, okay, whatever I learn, I'll write about that. That's the simplest content hack, I feel.
Yeah.
And I started out with that, right? And then AlphaFold, the moment that news broke on a Monday evening, and this was something I knew about, and I thought this is something I should write about. And by Tuesday afternoon, I had posted it. So that was that obsession that I felt of owning it. I didn't care about what I was eating, or whether I was whether I was missing out on a TV show or whatever. That was one. And two, after that, I started to market it on different platforms, right? Just posting, seeing what people do. And I kept having ideas, I should also repost this on Medium. Let's see if Medium gets more engagement. So Medium को लेकर के ना WhatsApp पे डाल देते हैं, and LinkedIn के ऊपर अपना direct link डालते हैं. Let's compare क्या हो रहा है. Google Analytics का cookie है, I've added to it. So I'm like refreshing Google Analytics every 30 seconds and seeing. So that obsession that I felt and what I got out of it, I feel like had that been there at my startup, at my job at a startup, I would have been super successful. And what I feel like is that the guys who were successful or are successful at Lucid Data have this feeling. And I think you have to ask yourself this, that what stage of life you are in, what do you really desire? Because it's really cool, it's very easy to tell yourself, I want the cool thing, I want to be at a startup, or I want to be at a corporate. It's very easy to fool yourself into wanting things that you don't really want, and then wasting your own time and wasting other people's time.
Yeah.
And I think that's the trap one has to prevent themselves from falling into. You ask yourself, what is the life you want? I think I like a life where I have the option of doing many things, and I like bursts of obsession. That's why my blog posts are very erratic. I like bursts of obsession, but then I get tired, then I want to relax. I have to suit my job and my pursuits in that
Yeah.
manner, which allow me to have bursts and don't require obsession. And my friend who was in Nvidia, she left her corporate job and moved to a startup because she was going for an MBA, but it got deferred due to
COVID, yeah.
COVID situation. So she joined as a product manager in a startup, and she obsessed over it for 6 months, and she worked really hard, 6 days a
Mhm.
week, right? So because her stage of life changed, her desires changed, and so I think being really keenly aware of what you're really looking out for is more important than any other metric in making this
Yeah, I
decision.
think it all boils down to know thyself, and then you'll be a better place to make decisions.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and that makes sense. It's quite
Yeah,
subjective. Yeah, and it. I think. And first of all, by the way, I enjoyed reading all of your blogs, and the AlphaFold one.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was interesting to see. The fundamentals that you have covered in that blog, and I could really relate. I was reading both of the articles at the same time, and at the AlphaFold article,
Mhm.
and then how you explained the whole biology behind it. It was pretty interesting. Uh,
I worry that my boss from back college will read it and scoff and say,
and
"No,
for
this guy never even published and he's trying to talk about these things." You might feel that way, but no. I mean that's the thing, that problem was close to mind because the first time I did
Yeah.
research in life, and this is the first thing I got to deep dive in, and that has a like I always like. And it also sort of led to me this framework of thinking in stats and probability, which is applicable to a lot of things in
Mhm.
life, right? So that is why it is always close to my heart.
Okay. So you have had your training in computational biology, and then from a bioinformatics engineer at Elucida to now solving distributed computing problems at Microsoft Azure. How do you justify this switch?
I think so when I was doing my first job hunt after 2 failed attempts at PhD applications, one of the people I interviewed with, there was this company called Accelera in Hyderabad itself, which is the Combio services company. So their SVP and I had a chat, and he basically said that I appreciate what you're trying to do, that you should go about your career in a T
Okay.
fashion. That first go for breadth, then figure out what you want
Yeah.
to go deep into. So there is this, especially in computer science, there's a huge bonus for there's a huge incentive for specializing really early on, and I don't think that that's a good idea. I think you should try things. I mean, the trade-off is that people who stick to one thing since the day they left college, they're earning way more, but it's up to you. So I think I've just been following my curiosity. That time I found myself curious about bioinformatics and what have you, and then in the industry, it felt like to me that this does not have the same rewards that I imagined there would be, both personally and on a science level, etc. And then and therefore I felt that engineering may be the better thing to do. And therein, I mean, I don't think I was too picky. I think it was more about what opportunity presents itself, because this is something me and my brother discuss a lot, that we just like intellectual stimulation. It may be of any kind. It is just that I've chosen, and usme I have chosen specifically to say, well, I like building things as well, even though
Yeah.
it's challenging. That's the thing I'd like to do. So any kind of engineering would have made sense, I believe. I don't think there is a deeper meaning to working
Okay.
with distributed systems or anything like that. But yeah, this is where I am at, and I am comfortable with life flowing like this. I don't like to direct it way beyond this anymore.
So would you say, like, first everyone should pursue, being a generalist, and then deep diving or picking up your niche, and becoming a specialist in where your curiosities lie?
Yeah, I think I don't think there's a general
Okay.
advice out there, because sometimes your curiosity, because what you're curious about is also a function of so many other things. Like sometimes you're curious about the things that have an instant feedback. So for example, being curious about politics can have an instant feedback for a lot of people, because you can read. Because there's a lot of, so you can become mildly good at understanding a
Yeah.
lot of topics, good enough to post about them and get your
Yeah.
dopamine hit, right? And you can that could be what your curiosity is,
Yeah.
right? So I want to assert that to distill out all your desires into what is being imposed on you and what you think is what you want to do. I think that is the hardest task. I don't think I've done that entirely. I don't think, but I think that should be the pursuit. That you should be really sure that you're doing things. Like a lot of guys who do engineering, they hate it because they think they want to do it, but then really soon they decide that that's not what they want to do. Like for example, I don't imagine ever doing an MBA. I
Yeah.
cannot. Right, I want to stick to technical side of things. So those calls one should be able to
Okay.
take, because people will because glamour and shiny things are all around us,
Mhm.
and we can get confused as to what we're really curious about. But yeah, if you're talking specifically about techies, then I think the way to pursue it is just college mein, if you're making
Yeah.
projects, right? Just see what you enjoy making
Yeah.
projects on most. Because there's, for example, AI/ML is a
Yeah.
fad right now, right? But AI/ML in the industry, nobody's really researching
Yeah.
on models. That's happening in the universities. In the industry, data engineering happens where you deploy all
Yeah.
of this at scale. Correct. And then at the end of the day, you are an engineer.
Yeah.
Right, and you could not have done data engineering back in college easily because you don't have resources to deploy big Kafka clusters and things like that, right? So I think you just, I mean, college is the right time for computer science guys or engineering guys to really figure out what kind of project what do they enjoy
Okay.
building, and if they enjoy building that, you just pursue that. I
Okay.
think.
Right. So now I want to talk about the interview process. So can you just describe the interview process at Microsoft, like the number of rounds, types of rounds, and type of problems they ask, and how did you prepare?
Well, problems are, I mean, so interview rounds, I don't think it's a
Okay.
standard anymore because of the
Okay.
COVID scenario. But yeah, you'll definitely have one remote round to sort of shortlist you, and then 2 to 4 rounds on site or whatever the equivalent of
Uh-huh.
that is nowadays, to get a sense of what you are. So, like some companies, Microsoft does not really go for coding questions that are hard for the sake
Okay.
of being hard. Like they'll not try to ask you unnecessary dynamic programming
Okay.
questions, things
Okay.
like that. Coding questions will be more around fundamentals, that you have a basic handle on basic puzzles that people should know in computer science.
Okay. Okay. And
Right.
would it be around, applying data structures or some standard algorithms that you should know?
Yeah, data structures and algorithms. But I think, I think things that you are just generally that are part of computer science theory.
Okay. Mhm.
Like you should know those
Mhm.
things, right? So you'd be expected to know trees reasonably
Okay.
well, and you should have clarity so that you can riff-raff with the interviewer about what variation will result into what and how would you approach it and things like that. But they'll not ask you to do complicated things just for the sake of it. So they don't want to filter for somebody who has gone through, because everybody knows coding problems are available on Geeks for Geeks, Interview Bit, and all
Yeah.
of these, right? So at the end of the day, if you just do enough volume, you can crack an
Yeah.
interview, right? It's either that, and then there are companies who want to test you for maybe being a competitive coder, like if you're really good at CodeChef
Yeah.
and Spoj and you've been to ICPC, etc. So then you would be able to do 1 grade or 2 grade higher sets of problems. So Microsoft is not looking for that, because then we have our these rounds,
Okay.
design rounds. That's where really the meat is, because that's where you can see if a candidate gets design of distributed systems or client server architecture or in
System
general,
design questions.
how do you make any
Okay.
system. Yeah, system design is where the focus is, especially at SD2 level. I don't know about SD1 level.
Oh, okay.
So, I mean, the fresher
Okay.
level. I don't know. I don't think design is expected at the entirely fresher level. That's where it's just coding and basic concepts, perhaps. So, my experience is that it's, you have to be a reasonably good developer, and that's
How did
enough.
you prepare?
After that, it's about luck.
Did you have to prepare, or was it just the
Interview bit Geeks for
experience and
Geeks.
your
No. I had been preparing, because coding rounds require some preparation, especially because there's some tips and tricks around here and there, right, which you don't usually use
Yeah.
in daily life. And so the expectation, I think, from the and I think this is something a friend of mine, a batchmate of mine, Lalit Kundu, who's like major coder, and he's working with Google in Mountain View. He's doing videos on coding. He said, and I think I really relate to that half of the interviews are actually looking at your thought
Yeah.
process. So if you're just able to communicate how you're approaching
Yeah.
a problem, That's more than enough, because you may not be able to, maybe there is a very specific trick to a particular question that you don't remember, but if you generally have a thought process in which you can express algorithms and how to approach a problem. So my approach is typically that I start with a brute force solution and I expressly say that this is going to be a brute force solution, and then we'll optimize it. Just iterate in front of the interviewer, and I think so Amazon doesn't like that. Amazon likes you to think of corner cases in the very first go, and that's an expectation they set from the HR
Okay.
itself. They will expressly tell you that this is something we expect, that you handle edge cases in your first attempt. So that's where this doesn't work. But with most scenarios in Microsoft, especially, I felt that you should be able to communicate your thought process, and that is
So basically,
usually
soft
works.
skills.
By the way, I've never taken an interview in Microsoft, so I don't know. Maybe it was other things that got me through, but this is how I think of my experience.
So, so you'd say that soft skills play a very a vital role in cracking these sort of interviews because, yeah,
Yeah, I think soft skills are something you should work on in general. I
hmm,
don't think, and I've said this before to many people, that I don't think it's about which language you're
yeah,
articulate in. So I don't. A lot of people tend to comment and say, you know what, you were raised in Delhi, so you're good in English, so that makes a
yeah,
lot of difference. But I have, I mean, if you look at Europeans, for example, they are not articulate in English, but they're articulate in their own languages. So even when they loosely translate to English, they're very
yeah,
charming. It's more about being articulate in
yeah,
one language. That you have to have the verbal means to distill your, or help precipitate your thoughts into language, and then you can loosely. I mean, it's fine if your translation is bad or your English
hmm,
vocabulary is bad, but in your mother tongue, are you really articulate, or is your portfolio of adjectives really limited, in which you cannot really express
yeah.
things? So that, I think, is major. I have a colleague of mine who's excellent in Hindi, and therefore his communication on the job in English is also excellent,
Hmm.
right? So that, I think that's kind of how it matters. Like, you should, soft skills people should focus on just for their own growth,
Yeah,
I
that is
feel.
true. And would you suggest some sort of like tips or maybe a process on how people can work on their soft skills? People who are not already good at it, of
I
course.
I don't know. I think you should. I mean, whatever you want to get good at, you look at people doing it. If
Okay.
you're learning a sport, watch
Yeah.
sports. If you're learning to speak, listen to people speak. If you're learning to write, listen, read. I think it's that.
Okay, that makes
I
sense. Makes
guess.
sense. I mean, like, yeah,
Yeah.
if you want to improve, then find out the resource yourself. Yeah,
You see better people
yeah,
doing it, like with cooking, right?
yeah. It's just about finding like who are like really good at it, and then just copy them, see what they're doing.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah,
Yeah.
it's really that
It's
simple.
really like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
great.
I mean,
Yeah,
it's
it's
easier
easy.
said than done. I
Mhm.
understand, but I think, but if you're already pursuing things like engineering, I think you have the means to
Yeah,
expose yourself to enough things.
exactly.
Yeah. So, one very common question that I keep encountering is how can an engineering student from, let's say, a tier three college, you know, make it to big companies like Microsoft? So there's something that is all around different forums, portals that I'm part of, and people keep coming up. And in my DMs also, it's like, yes, sir, I'm from this college. Would I be able to make it? Can I like switch? All of these sort of questions.
So they are asked, they want good engineers, become a good engineer. It's really that simple. Or at least become prepared to be a good engineer. I mean, and that's, I know that's easier said than
Yeah.
done, and it's a lot of things involved, like
Mhm.
curriculum of most colleges don't allow for sufficient exposure. You feel that,
Yeah.
oh, fourth year में वो लोग XYZ का course करते हैं, तो that is an advanced thing,
Yeah.
whereas in an IIT and a triple IT, that thing is left to for you to learn in first year itself. So
Yeah.
वो how, मतलब जो फ्लाइट ले सकती है तुम्हारा ब्रेन, वो एक
Mhm.
constraint बन जाता है. And I
Yeah,
think the
that's quite
internet solves
limited.
this problem by saying that at any age, with or without a degree in computer science, you can build stuff. That's the good thing about
Yeah.
the internet scenario, right? Like,
Mhm.
even without a degree, you could become, anything as far as software engineering is concerned. So I think putting yourself out there and just building more and more, and building slightly complicated things, not just, I mean, it's easy to do things that are like, say, for example, if you want to build a flashy CV around AI,
Mhm.
it's easy to participate and just do कि मैंने courses कर लिए. I think
Yeah, deep
I
learning
think speaking,
specialization is something that
yeah,
all of
from
them have
Stanford,
mentioned.
Andrew Ng course,
Yeah.
I have become very credential averse,
Uh,
right? So I've become credential averse, and I think that computer science is unique in that sense that it does not ask credentials of you anymore.
mhm.
To any company, if you can just demonstrate your skill, I think I think everybody should try and build their own website. I think it's a very good start, right?
Yeah.
Just build a genuine website from bottom up. Learn as many things as you can on the way. Like my next pit stop for myself is to learn front end development. Right, I've never done that much before, and
Interesting.
I've been using themes so far, but I learned that, right.
Yeah.
And in the process, I now become employable as a
Mhm.
front end engineer. Right.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
that is all. Like that's I think just becoming a good engineer, and basically if you feel that, oh, but I am from my credentials don't match a certain level, then that's a cage you're building entirely for yourself. I have seen people from all sorts of colleges in all these companies. It
Uh-huh.
is just about you. I don't think, I mean, I don't think it is the case anymore that, oh, you may have to, do work other jobs to pave your way there. Sure, that Microsoft maybe never came to your college for hiring. That I understand,
Yeah.
right? But so you may have to take a path to reach there, but it is achievable. None of these companies I've ever heard anybody say things like, oh, you are from XYZ college, therefore you are
Yeah.
in XYZ position. That is I mean,
Not the
that's not
case.
the
Yeah.
case. Just
Yeah.
That's just
I
not the
think we
case.
have so many examples these days that this is not the case, especially with the tech
Microsoft
companies at
CEO
least.
is not from Taiwan, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, the
Okay.
CEO is not from a tier one college, so you can relax about it.
Yeah. All right. So this is the last round. So I've got a rapid
Hmm.
fire round
Okay.
and so I'll be asking you a few questions, and you've got like 3 to 4 seconds, 5 seconds maybe, to answer these. And these are pretty interesting. So yeah,
Mhm.
you'll have to be on your feet to answer these. So great. So shall we start?
Yes, bring it
All
on.
right. So first question: what is one website that you waste most of your time on?
Twitter.
Okay.
Twitter.
What text editor do you use?
Text editor.
Which, yeah,
VS Code these days or Vim. Vim is my love. Huh?
Vim as well. Yeah. Okay, great. What's one of your favorite movies, TV shows?
Movies, Tarantino basically, Pulp Fiction maybe,
Okay,
and TV shows. All-time favorite, The Office.
The Office. Okay, great, good choice.
Yeah,
What is one activity that helps you blow off steam?
weightlifting.
Weightlifting, nice. Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
One thing
always.
you don't like about working at Microsoft?
I don't like about working at
Yeah,
Microsoft.
yeah.
That you can't say on public streams. No, I think I'm not. I'm new enough. I don't think I have my pain points ready yet,
Okay, okay.
and I've never been
One.
to the office, so I don't have my pain points ready yet. I think office में
Uh-huh.
I'm pretty sure I'll find coffee अच्छी नहीं है और things like that to complain
Okay.
about. Yeah.
Okay. One book that you recommend every aspiring engineer should read.
Ooh, I have not read many books, sadly. I am not very up to date on books, but engineers. I'm reading this book called How to Build Distributed Systems by Martin. I forget the name. I
Yeah,
Klebsman, Martin Klebsman, yeah.
I'll
So
put the link in the
I've
description and there'll be
Yeah, I think this is the part you
recommendation
should
for it.
edit out because yeah, I'm not a very well read person. I end up reading a lot of news. I read a lot of hacker news. I think yeah, that's good for engineers.
Okay, Hacker News. All right.
Hacker
Fine.
news. Yeah.
Okay. Best tool or website you use to keep yourself abreast of the advances in tech. So Hacker News or
Hacker news and Twitter, the right Twitter accounts, I think they help me stay abreast.
yeah, you can look at his following list and find out.
Yeah.
Okay. One piece of advice would you give yourself 5 years ago?
5 years ago,
Yeah.
build more, say less. I say too much, I build very less. I should build more.
Build more. Okay. Build more. Okay. And then
Yeah, talk
academia
is
or
cheap.
industry? Yeah.
For me, industry, very clear. Academia, I'm done with. Yeah.
Okay, okay. All right. I think, yeah, that brings us to the end of this round and
That was so
the
much
con.
fun. Yeah.
Okay, great. And one last question: do you have any parting message for engineering professionals or who are trying to get into maybe a startup or just engineer in the engineering world in general? Let's say.
Just build, just build. If you enjoy engineering systems for yourself, you will enjoy it. I will swear. That's the mistake I've done. I'm not built enough in life, and I regret it every single day. So build more.
Great, Abhirath. That was quite insightful and enlightening as well. So I hope, yeah, I think many would find this very enriching and many would have a lot to learn from this conversation that we have had. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much
Yeah.
for having me, Ashit.
All right. Take care. Bye.
All right.